This is the haunting story of how two young lives were stolen inside the walls of their own home. On August 24, 2021, the call came in from Coventry Road in southwest Baltimore. A neighbor had reported a foul odor seeping from an apartment door. It was the kind of smell that made people stop in their tracks, one that spoke of something gone terribly wrong. When police entered, they weren't prepared for what they would find. Inside, they discovered the decomposed bodies of two children, 6-year-old Darnaria Thomas, lying in a bathtub with a cord wound around her neck, and 8-year-old Davin Thomas Jr., hidden in a sleeping bag, a knife still lodged in his chest, a plastic trash bag tied cruelly over his head. Before we go further, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this are not easy to hear, but they shine a light on warning signs and failures that we cannot afford to ignore. Your support ensures these stories are told, remembered, and shared. The scene was one of unimaginable horror. Toys still sat where children once played. Clothes were scattered in corners. The silence inside the apartment was deafening, the absence of life made even louder by the sight of what remained. These weren't strangers. They were siblings. They were children who had laughed, argued, and dreamed, and their final moments had been taken from them by the one person who should have been their greatest protector, their mother, 28-year-old Jamaria Hall. When investigators pieced together what had happened, the timeline became clearer. The children had been dead for days, their small bodies left behind as if their lives had never mattered. Neighbors had begun to sense something was wrong. No one had seen the children, and the smell became impossible to ignore. When the discovery was made, it sent shockwaves through Baltimore, a city all too familiar with tragedy, but still unprepared for something this intimate and this devastating. The next
Jamira, she just always, her kids were her top priority. She always wanted to do better for them. She went to school for them,
Chantel Cochran caught up with her friend Jamir Hall last week over text. The two went to technical college together, studying medical assistance. As they texted back and forth, she says the 28-year-old seemed happy.
She sounded like she was getting herself together. So it made me happy to see that, things were finally starting to look up for her. She just basically said she was trying to get her life back in order and, slowly but surely. And I told her one day at a time.
Day, August 25, police arrested Jamaria Hall. At first, her demeanor was described as cold, almost detached. But soon she reportedly confessed to killing her children. In the hours and days that followed, a portrait of Jamaria began to emerge, a mother battling demons far larger than most people could comprehend. Court records and testimony revealed that Jamaria Hall had a long history of mental illness.
Vic and Rick, we've learned from court documents she faced 2 counts of negligence, of criminal negligence back in 2018. Now, we've also heard tonight from a neighbor who said she only saw a good mom. She tells us she can't understand what went wrong.
She was later diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, a condition that blends symptoms of schizophrenia, hallucinations, delusions, distorted thinking, with the severe mood swings of a mood disorder. In her mind, reality and fantasy blurred together in dangerous and unpredictable ways. To outsiders, she may have appeared simply troubled or erratic, but in truth she was living in a world where her thoughts betrayed her and her grip on reality slipped in and out of reach. This was not the first time warning signs had surfaced. Back in 2018, Hall had been reported missing with her children after she allegedly set fire to their home. That incident ended at a hospital, where she and the children were found safe but shaken. The fire should have been a red flag, a desperate signal that something inside this family was deeply broken.
For Hall and the children in October of 2018, when according to charging documents, Hall pled guilty to arson after she set fire to a frying pan with family photos in it and disabled smoke detectors while staying at her mother's house. Hall and the children were eventually found uninjured at a hospital.
But somehow, after the embers cooled, life carried on. There was no major intervention, no lasting child welfare protection that could have prevented what would happen 3 years later. By 2019, a custody hearing was on the books. Concerns about her ability to care for her children had already made their way into the legal system. But bureaucracy moves slowly, and families often slip between the cracks. It remains unclear how much oversight actually existed in the months and years before Darnaria and Davin's deaths. What is clear is that by the summer of 2021, the system that should have stepped in had not done enough, and by the time someone finally knocked on the door on Coventry Road, it was far too late. When Jamaria Hall stood in court, the charges against her were severe. 2 counts of first-degree murder, first-degree assault, reckless endangerment. The community watched closely, grappling with the horror of a mother killing her own children. Some people felt fury. How could anyone take the lives of such innocent children? Others asked harder questions. What could have been done earlier? Who failed to act? Was Jamaria a criminal or a victim of her own mind? The legal process dragged on. In 2021, she was initially deemed incompetent to stand trial. Mental health evaluations concluded that she did not understand the proceedings and could not assist in her own defense. For a while, her fate hung in limbo. But by 2022, that assessment was reversed. With treatment and evaluation, she was eventually found competent enough to face justice. Then, on April 17, 2024, came the turning point. In a Baltimore courtroom, Jamaria Hall pleaded guilty to the murders of her children. But her plea was not simple. She entered what is known as a plea of not criminally responsible NCR by reason of mental illness. Expert testimony described her condition in detail. Schizoaffective disorder had plagued her with hallucinations and delusions. She was not living in the same reality as those around her. In her distorted mind, the violence she committed may not have registered as violence at all, but as some twisted necessity born out of paranoia and sickness. Judge Gail Rayson listened to the arguments and the evidence. In the end, the court accepted the plea. Hall would not serve her time in prison, but would instead be committed to a state psychiatric hospital, where she would receive ongoing treatment and monitoring. Judge Rayson made it clear that this commitment carried no guarantee of release. If she were ever discharged, it would only be under strict conditions: psychiatric care, continued medication, and bans on recreational substances that could destabilize her fragile state. But for many, the outcome raised painful questions. Was justice truly served? The children were still gone, the community was still shattered, and their mother, the one responsible, would not be punished in the way the public often expects for murder. Instead, she would be treated. For some, this felt like mercy, where there should have been retribution. For others, it was a recognition of a deeper truth, that untreated mental illness can become as dangerous as any weapon. Behind the headlines, 2 children are still the heart of this story. Danaria, only 6 years old, with her life just beginning to unfold. Davin, only 8, old enough to dream of the future but robbed of the chance to live it. Their faces became symbols in news reports. But to those who knew them, they were far more than that. They were voices in classrooms, laughter on playgrounds, children with personalities and potential that would never be fully realized. The neighbors on Coventry Road still remember that day. The smell that crept into the hallway, the sirens, the moment they learned that the children they had seen coming and going, carrying backpacks, riding bikes, were gone.
Friendly, very respectful, they yes ma'am, no ma'am, may I, can I, they're very respectful. She definitely raised 2 very calm, respectable children.
For weeks, the apartment complex carried an eerie silence, as if the walls themselves grieved. And for the family members left behind, the loss is permanent. Grandparents, cousins, aunts and uncles must carry the weight of what happened, wondering if they could have done something, if they missed signs, if they might have changed the outcome. The case of Jamaria Hall is more than one family's tragedy. It is a mirror held up to society. It asks us to reckon with uncomfortable truths. That mental illness, when untreated, can destroy families. That child protection systems are often overwhelmed and underprepared. That sometimes the people children need saving from are the very people who brought them into the world. Somewhere tonight, another mother is struggling under the weight of untreated illness. Somewhere, another family is missing the warning signs. Somewhere, another child is in danger because the system designed to protect them is stretched too thin. And if nothing changes, another story like this one will be told. Danaria Thomas and Davin Thomas Jr. will never grow up, never see their birthdays pile up, never become teenagers or adults. Their story ended in that apartment on Coventry Road. But their lives must not be remembered only for the way they ended. They must be remembered as reminders of what happens when warnings go unheeded, when systems fail, and when the myths we tell ourselves about family safety are shattered by reality. Their names, Danaria and Davin, must not be forgotten, because remembering them means acknowledging the danger of ignoring mental illness. It means recognizing that some tragedies can be prevented if we listen, act and intervene sooner. And it means honoring the lives of 2 children who deserved so much more than the ending they received. For Baltimore, and for anyone listening now, this case stands as a warning. Children cannot wait for the world to get it right. They need protection now, in real time, before the unthinkable happens. Because for Danaria and Davin, time ran out. Their trust, their innocence, their very lives were stolen. and the rest of us are left with the responsibility to make sure it does not happen again. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Sharing these stories spreads awareness, honors the victims, and may one day save a life.
A shocking confession, and police say a mother admitted to killing her 2 young children, then leaving their bodies to decompose inside their Southwest Baltimore apartment. Tonight, police are still trying to answer the question everyone wants to know, and that is why. Hello, everyone. This is the news at 11, and special welcome to those who are streaming on CBS in Baltimore. I'm Vic Carter.
And I'm Rick Vitter. Now, neighbors tell us they only ever saw a loving mother with those children, but as investigators try to piece this all together, tonight we are learning more about the suspect who had some run-ins with police.
WJC is live. Annie Rose Ramos tells us this is not the first time she's faced charges related to her children. Annie Rose.
Vic and Rick, we've learned from court documents she faced 2 counts of negligence, of criminal negligence back in 2018. Now, we've also heard tonight from a neighbor who said she only saw a good mom. She tells us she can't understand what went wrong.
A gruesome discovery leads to a mother's arrest.
Tonight, and thank you all for joining us. I'm joined by Mayor Brandon Scott and my Deputy Commissioner Cherie Briscoe. Yesterday, officers were dispatched to the 500 block of Coventry Road to investigate a reported death on arrival inside of an apartment. When officers arrived on the scene, they discovered the bodies of 2 juvenile victims who were both in a state of decomposition with obvious visible trauma. Our homicide detectives are currently working with the medical examiner's office to determine the exact cause of death and the exact time of death. Both victims have been identified as 6-year-old Denaria Thomas and her brother, 8-year-old Davin Thomas. My heart goes out to the family members, and on behalf of the Baltimore Police Department, we send our condolences and our heartfelt prayers. Now, while our investigators are always working under very challenging circumstances, there is nothing more difficult than investigating the murder of a child, much less 2 children. And while this investigation is still very early on, we can confirm now that the mother, 28-year-old Jamera Hall, is the suspect in this case, having confessed to murdering her children. She is currently in our custody, and detectives will be pursuing criminal charges. We're still reviewing surveillance video, combing through calls for service, and speaking with residents and gathering any additional details around this heartbreaking incident. At this time, I will turn it over to our mayor to say a few words.
Coventry Manor Apartments Tuesday afternoon because something smelled bad. Responding officers say they found 6-year-old Denaria Thomas and her 8-year-old brother, Devin, their bodies decomposing. The police commissioner says there are reports that the children were seen as recently as last week.
And I have 2 little mini-me's tonight. This evening I have
Denaria Thomas Joy.
And I have
Devin Thomas.
1 year ago, Jamera recorded this podcast with her 2 children.
Y'all been driving me crazy. But I love y'all.
I too.
Okay?
Okay.
They were like a trio. If you saw her, you saw them.
Their neighbor, who did not want to be identified, says her own daughter and Denaria were best friends.
Denaria and my daughter would play in the hallway.
Calling Jamera an attentive mother. That neighbor says this spray paint on the grass is from where Jamera recently painted a table for her kids.
It was beautiful. It was like the blue sky, the beautiful blue sky with the white clouds.
Now the family's neighbor wonders how she'll tell her daughter that her best friend is gone.
I have no clue how I'm going to explain this to my baby, because she played with them every day.
Now, Vic, in 2018, police tell us the children were reported missing, but found the very next day with their mother at the hospital. Now, this mother is now in police custody and charges are pending. Reporting live at 11, I'm Annie Rose Ramos for WJZ.
Jamira, she just always, her kids were her top priority. She always wanted to do better for them. She went to school for them,
Chantel Cochran caught up with her friend Jamir Hall last week over text. The two went to technical college together, studying medical assistance. As they texted back and forth, she says the 28-year-old seemed happy.
She sounded like she was getting herself together. So it made me happy to see that, things were finally starting to look up for her. She just basically said she was trying to get her life back in order and, slowly but surely. And I told her one day at a time.
Wednesday, police announced that Hall is in police custody after they say she confessed to killing her two children, 8-year-old Devin Thomas and 6-year-old Denier Thomas. Police found their bodies Tuesday in an apartment on Coventry Road in southwest Baltimore after someone called 911 reporting a foul odor. Police haven't given a possible motive. An autopsy will reveal how they died and how long they'd been in that apartment. Neighbors say they often saw both kids playing outside until last week.
She was always about her kids. She always, made comments to do better for them. So I can't even I just make it make sense to me because it's honestly just disheartening. It just, I have 4 kids of my own and God forbid. I'm sorry. It's just not something that I would think that somebody would do to the child that they created.
There was a search for Hall and the children in October of 2018, when, according to charging documents, Hall pled guilty to arson after she set fire to a frying pan with family photos in it and disabled smoke detectors while staying at her mother's house. Hall and the children were eventually found uninjured at a hospital.
I'm praying for those babies. They didn't deserve it. Whatever was going on with her, to herself, I just wish she would have reached out for help. It's a lot of people surrounding her, so I just wish she would have reached out to somebody.
So we know after that October 2018 incident, Hall was questioned by the Baltimore Police Child Abuse Unit. We also know that the children were taken to the Child Abuse Center here in Baltimore at that time, but we don't know what happened after that. Hall has not yet been formally charged. Reporting live downtown tonight, Kai Reed, WBAL TV 11 News.
Well, Andre, police confirm the bodies found were those of a boy and a girl. Both were in a state of decomposition and had visible trauma to their bodies, confirming what neighbors already suspected.
I just cried. It's very heartbreaking.
A knock on the door at Tony Hyman's apartment Tuesday afternoon brought her devastating news.
The police came to my apartment and pretty much told me that 2 children were found unresponsive in the building next door. I literally just saw them. They just asked about my daughter when she was coming back, and they seemed fine.
Tony says her 9-year-old daughter plays with the boy and girl who are around the same age. She says they lived in the apartment on Coventry Road with their mother.
Very friendly, very respectful, they yes ma'am, no ma'am, may I, can I, they're very respectful. She definitely raised 2 very calm, respectable children. They play in the grass and my daughter thinks they're just fun to be around.
Police confirmed 2 people were found deceased in a home in the building, but have not released their ages or genders. Homicide detectives were on the scene into the evening Tuesday.
It's really troublesome to know that something is going on like that. I mean, we don't get this kind of drama in this neighborhood.
Neighbors say this southwest Baltimore neighborhood is usually quiet and safe, but they watched the crime scene tape rolled out and knew something bad had happened.
I just hope that everything will be uncovered and somebody will get some answers to this. I wouldn't want to see anybody's family go through this at all. No one's family.
Neighbors and friends wait for answers as well as police continue their investigation into what happened inside that apartment.
And it's easy to dismiss it when you don't know these people, but when you actually know these children, you spend time with these children, it's very heartbreaking. It's very shocking.
I just feel sorry. My heart goes out to whoever it is, So we just keep them lifted up in prayer. That's all we can do.
The medical examiner is working to determine the exact cause of death while homicide detectives are investigating. Reporting live at police headquarters tonight, Kim Day, CWBAL TV 11 News.